Orphaned Kitten walks into busy cafe, staff left stunned by what follows. It was a bustling morning at Ella's cafe, the kind of day where the smell of fresh coffee and pastries mingled with the sound of clinking cups and cheerful chatter. Located on a busy corner in the heart of the city, the cafe has become a favorite spot for locals seeking a warm drink and a brief escape from the hustle and bustle. Ella, the owner, was moving briskly behind the counter, juggling orders and offering warm smiles to every customer. Her staff, a close-knit group of baristas and servers, worked in perfect rhythm, keeping the energy light despite the rush. It was an ordinary morning until the kitten arrived. No one noticed the small figure at first. The kitten was no larger than a coffee mug, its gray fur matted and its tiny paws hesitant on the slick tile floor. It slipped in through the front door unnoticed, weaving its way between the legs of busy customers. But as the line shifted, a soft mewing broke through the hum of the cafe. "Did anyone hear that?" asked Jenna, one of the baristas, pausing mid-order. She scanned the room, her brow furrowing in confusion. "I think it came from under the table," said a young man sitting nearby. He crouched down, peering into the shadowed space beneath his chair. "Oh wow, it's a kitten." The room seemed to freeze as all eyes turned toward the tiny creature now timidly stepping into the light. Its wide, frightened eyes darted around the room, and a collective murmur swept through the cafe. Ella rushed over, her hands still holding a tray of cups. "A kitten? Here?" she asked, her voice filled with surprise. Setting the tray down, she knelt beside the little one, her heart aching at the sight. The kitten looked thin, its ribs faintly visible beneath its fur, and its small body trembled slightly. "Poor thing," she murmured, reaching out slowly. The kitten flinched but didn't run. Its eyes locked onto hers. "You must be starving." Jenna appeared beside her, holding a small saucer of milk she'd grabbed from the counter. "Here," she said softly. "Let's see if it'll drink." Ella placed the saucer on the floor, and the kitten hesitated for a moment before cautiously stepping forward. It sniffed the milk, then began lapping it up with eager, desperate movements. The staff and customers watched in silence, their hearts collectively softening at the sight. As the kitten drank, the cafe seemed to come alive with conversation. "Where do you think it came from?" one customer asked. "Looks like it's been through a lot," said another, shaking their head. "Poor little guy." Ella straightened, her mind racing. "We can't just leave it out there again," she said firmly. "It's not safe. We could keep it here at least for a little while," Jenna suggested. "Until we figure something out." The idea hung in the air for a moment before a voice from the back chimed in. "I think it's a great idea," said Sam, one of the servers. "And besides, a cafe cat? That sounds kind of perfect." Ella smiled despite herself. "All right," she said, "but only until we find its owner or a good home." The kitten, now curled up beside the empty saucer, let out a soft purr as if it understood the kindness being offered. The cafe's usual rhythm resumed, but now there was an added sense of warmth and excitement in the air. Customers leaned in to get a closer look, some snapping pictures, others asking questions. For the staff, the kitten became an immediate source of joy and distraction. But what none of them realized was that the little creature had more to offer than they could have imagined, and its presence would change their lives in ways they never expected. The kitten settled in quickly, though it still carried an air of nervousness. Jenna, who had a soft spot for animals, took it upon herself to make a little bed out of a clean dish towel in one of the cafe's quieter corners. She placed it near the warmth of the espresso machine, and to everyone's surprise, the kitten seemed to approve, curling up tightly and letting out a tiny sigh of contentment. "That's it," Jenna declared with a grin. "This little one's officially part of the team." Sam laughed, leaning on the counter as he watched the kitten. "Should we name it? Can't just keep calling it Kitten." Suggestions poured in from both staff and customers. "Latte," someone called out. "Too basic," Jenna shot back. "How about espresso?" "Espresso sounds cool," Sam said, nodding. "Strong name for a little guy." Ella smiled, though her gaze lingered on the kitten thoughtfully. "Let's hold off on naming it for now," she said. "We don't know the full story yet." The cafe, already known for its cozy atmosphere, became even more of a hotspot as word spread about the kitten. Regular customers began showing up with small toys and treats, hoping to catch a glimpse of the newest edition. Children especially loved stopping by, their faces lighting up as the kitten batted at a piece of string or stretched lazily on the counter. One afternoon, a woman walked in with a small bag of cat food and set it on the counter. "For your little mascot," she said with a warm smile. "It's nice to see a place like this giving a stray a chance." Ella thanked her, though something about the woman's words stayed with her. The kitten wasn't just a stray anymore. It was becoming part of their lives. And as much as Ella wanted to protect her heart, she couldn't deny the growing attachment she felt. As the days turned into weeks, the kitten began to bring unexpected changes to the cafe. Customers lingered longer, drawn in by the warm, playful energy the little creature brought to the space. Conversations flowed more easily, laughter filled the air, and even the busiest mornings seemed a little brighter. For the staff, the kitten became a source of comfort. Jenna often talked to it as she worked, recounting her day or playfully venting about particularly demanding customers. Sam, who had always been a bit reserved, surprised everyone by bringing in a scratching post he'd bought on his day off. "You're full of surprises, Sam," Ella teased as she watched him set it up near the kitten's bed. "Yeah, well," Sam said, scratching the back of his neck. "This little guy deserves it." One rainy afternoon, the cafe was quieter than usual, the steady patter of rain on the windows creating a soothing backdrop. Ella was going through inventory in the back when Jenna came rushing in, her face a mix of excitement and concern. "Ella, you need to come out here," Jenna said. "What's wrong?" Ella asked, her heart skipping a beat. "It's the kitten," Jenna said quickly. "I think it found someone." Ella followed Jenna to the front of the cafe, where an older man was seated at a corner table, his hands trembling slightly as he sipped his tea. The kitten had climbed onto his lap, purring loudly as it nuzzled against him. The man's eyes were red-rimmed, as though he had been crying, but there was a soft smile on his face. "I don't know what came over it," Jenna whispered. "It just jumped up there and hasn't moved since." Ella approached the man cautiously. "Is everything all right?" she asked gently. The man looked up, his gaze filled with gratitude. "It's more than all right," he said. "This little one, it reminds me of a cat I had years ago. I lost her when I moved to the city. Seeing this kitten just brings back so many memories." The moment left everyone in the cafe speechless. As the man stroked the kitten's fur, it was clear that the connection between them was more than coincidence. The staff exchanged glances, each of them wondering if the kitten's arrival was part of something greater than they had realized. Ella, though deeply moved, couldn't shake a feeling in her chest, a mixture of hope and hesitation. Could this kitten have been sent here for a reason? She thought to herself. And if so, what else is it here to teach us? After the older man left, the cafe seemed to buzz with a quiet wonder. The staff couldn't stop talking about how the kitten had chosen him, almost like it knew he needed comfort. "It's like the kitten has a sixth sense," Jenna said as she refilled the sugar jars. "It's not just random. It's helping people." Sam, ever the skeptic, rolled his eyes but smiled. "You're giving it too much credit. It's a cat, not a psychic." Ella, watching the kitten curl up on its makeshift bed, wasn't so sure. Something about the way it had approached the man, the way it seemed to melt into his lap, stuck with her. "Animals have instincts we can't explain," she said softly. Maybe it just knew he needed someone. The cafe's reputation continued to grow, with more customers stopping by to see the kitten. It became a sort of unofficial therapy animal for the regulars. One rainy evening, a woman who looked tired and frazzled sat down at a table near the window. She ordered a cup of tea, her hands trembling slightly as she held the menu. The kitten, usually content to lounge near the counter, suddenly sprang to life. It leapt down, weaving its way through the cafe until it reached the woman's table. Without hesitation, it jumped onto the chair beside her and placed a tiny paw on her arm. The woman froze, her eyes widening. "Oh," she whispered, looking down at the kitten. "Hello there." The kitten let out a soft mew, its gaze steady and calm. The woman's shoulders, which had been tense moments before, seemed to relax. She reached out hesitantly, running her fingers through the kitten's fur. For the first time since she had entered, she smiled. Jenna, who had been watching from the counter, leaned toward Ella. "That's the second time," she said in a low voice. "It's like the kitten knows who needs it." Ella nodded, her own heart swelling at the sight. The woman stayed longer than expected, sipping her tea and petting the kitten as if it were the most natural thing in the world. When she finally left, she stopped by the counter. "Thank you," she said, her voice trembling slightly. I had a hard day, but this little one made it better." "You're welcome," Ella replied, her smile warm. "Come back anytime." As the woman walked out into the rain, Ella glanced at the kitten, now back on its bed, cleaning its paws. "What are you up to, little one?" she murmured. The kitten's uncanny ability to comfort people didn't go unnoticed. Over time, more visitors shared similar stories. A man who had recently lost his job found solace in the kitten's quiet companionship. A teenager struggling with anxiety stayed for hours, sketching the kitten as it napped on her lap. Even the staff began to notice changes in themselves. Sam, who had once been reserved and skeptical, started showing a softer side. He would sneak the kitten bits of chicken from his lunch and often stayed after closing to play with it. "It's like the kitten brings out the best in people," Jenna said one evening, watching Sam dangle a toy mouse for the kitten. Ella agreed. The cafe, once just a place to grab a coffee, had transformed into a sanctuary, a space where people felt safe, connected, and understood. And at the center of it all was the kitten. But not everyone saw the kitten as a miracle. One morning, a man in a business suit strode into the cafe, his phone pressed to his ear as he barked orders at someone on the other end. He seemed agitated, his movements brisk and sharp as he approached the counter. "I'll have a black coffee," he said curtly, barely glancing up. As he waited, the kitten trotted over, curious about the new visitor. It let out a soft mew, but the man scowled, shooing it away with a wave of his hand. "Keep the cat away from me," he said. "I'm not a fan." The cafe fell silent, tension hanging in the air. The kitten tilted its head, seemingly unfazed, and retreated to its corner. Jenna shot the man a glare as she prepared his coffee, muttering under her breath. Ella approached the man, her tone calm but firm. "I understand if you're not a fan of animals," she said, "but this kitten is part of our cafe. It's brought a lot of comfort to people." The man sighed, his frustration softening slightly. "Sorry," he muttered. "I've had a rough morning." As he sat down to drink his coffee, the kitten stayed in its corner, watching him intently. Ella couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to his story, but for now, she let it be. Later that day, after the man had left, Ella found a note tucked under his coffee cup. It read, "I didn't mean to be rude. I've been going through some things. Thanks for not pushing me away." Ella folded the note carefully, her heart aching for the man. She glanced at the kitten, now fast asleep, and smiled. "You're doing more than we ever expected," she whispered. "Keep it up." As the days turned into weeks, the kitten's influence over the cafe grew. It wasn't just the regulars who noticed the change. It was the staff, the passersby who stopped for just a moment, and even Ella herself. The cafe had always been a cozy spot, but now it felt alive, almost enchanted. The kitten had become a symbol of comfort, a quiet presence that seemed to draw people in and give them exactly what they needed. One afternoon, a young woman entered the cafe, her face pale and drawn. She sat at a corner table, her hands wrapped tightly around a worn notebook. She didn't order anything, instead staring out the window as though lost in thought. The kitten, who had been napping by the counter, stirred and stretched before hopping down. It padded silently over to the woman, jumping lightly onto the chair beside her. The woman startled slightly but didn't move. The kitten leaned forward, gently pressing its small head against her arm. A tear slid down the woman's cheek as she reached out to stroke the kitten's fur. "I don't know how you knew," she whispered, her voice barely audible, "but thank you." Jenna watched from behind the counter, her heart aching at the sight. "That's the third time this week," she said to Ella. "It's like this kitten can read minds or something." Ella nodded, her gaze fixed on the scene. Maybe it's not reading minds, she said softly. Maybe it's just listening in a way we don't. The kitten's uncanny ability to connect with people began to spark curiosity beyond the cafe. A local journalist, intrigued by the growing buzz, came to see the kitten for herself. She spent hours at the cafe, observing how it moved between customers, offering its quiet companionship to those who seemed to need it most. When she interviewed Ella, she asked, "Do you think the kitten has some kind of special gift?" Ella thought for a moment before replying. "I don't know if it's a gift," she said, "but I do know this little one has a way of reminding us to slow down, to pay attention, and to be kind to ourselves and each other." The journalist's article, titled "The Kitten Who Heals," went viral, drawing even more attention to the cafe. Visitors began arriving from outside the city, each with their own reasons for wanting to meet the kitten. Some came out of curiosity, others out of hope. Among them was a man in his 40s, who introduced himself to Ella as Robert. He explained that he had lost his wife a year ago and had been struggling to find joy in anything since. "I heard about the kitten," he said, his voice hesitant. "I thought maybe, I don't know, maybe it could help." Ella guided him to a quiet table, her heart heavy with the weight of his words. The kitten, as if sensing his presence, leapt down from its bed and trotted over to him. It climbed onto his lap without hesitation, curling up and purring softly. For the first time in months, Robert smiled. "I don't know how," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "but it's like it understands." As Robert stroked the kitten, Ella saw a shift in him, a flicker of light breaking through the darkness that had held him for so long. But the kitten's greatest impact wasn't just on the cafe's visitors. It was on the staff, who began to see themselves and their work in a new light. Jenna, who had been debating whether to leave the cafe to pursue her dream of becoming a vet, found clarity in the kitten's presence. Watching how this little one helps people, she confided to Ella one evening, "It's made me realize how much I want to do the same. I think it's time for me to take that step." Ella smiled, proud but bittersweet. "You'll be amazing," she said. "And this kitten will always be part of your story." Even Sam, who had once been skeptical of the kitten's impact, found himself opening up in ways he never expected. One evening, as he cleaned up after closing, he sat down beside the kitten, who was curled up on the counter. "You're a mystery, you know that?" he said, scratching behind its ears. "But I think you've helped me figure some things out." The kitten's influence extended beyond the cafe, weaving its way into the hearts of everyone it touched. But even as it brought joy and healing, a question lingered in Ella's mind. Where had the kitten come from, and why had it chosen their cafe? She couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story, something waiting to be uncovered. One night, as the cafe was closing, Ella noticed a shadow outside the window. A figure stood just beyond the streetlight's glow, watching the cafe quietly. When Ella opened the door to investigate, the figure was gone. But in its place was a small, weathered note tucked beneath the welcome mat. The note read, "Take care of her. She was meant to find you." Ella read the note several times, her mind racing with questions. Who had left it? How did they know about the kitten? And what did they mean by "meant to find you"? She brought the note inside, showing it to Jenna and Sam as they closed up for the night. "This isn't random," she said, placing the note on the counter. "Someone knows about the kitten. Maybe even where it came from." Sam frowned, leaning over to examine the note. "It's strange," he said. "Why wouldn't they just talk to you directly? Why leave a cryptic message?" Jenna, who had been quiet, spoke up. "Maybe they wanted to stay anonymous," she suggested. "Or maybe they think the kitten belongs here now." Ella nodded slowly. "Either way, it feels like a piece of the puzzle. I just wish I knew more." The note only deepened Ella's curiosity. Over the next few days, she kept an eye out for the figure she had seen, but no one suspicious appeared. The kitten, oblivious to the growing intrigue, continued to charm visitors and staff alike. If it had a secret to reveal, it seemed in no hurry to do so. Then, one evening, something unexpected happened. A young man entered the cafe, his expression a mixture of nervousness and hope. He carried a small, worn photo in his hand, which he clutched tightly as he approached the counter. "Excuse me," he said, his voice hesitant. "I heard about the kitten you have here. I was wondering if I could see it." Ella, though surprised by his request, nodded. "Of course," she said. She gestured toward the kitten, who was perched on its favorite spot near the espresso machine. The man's breath caught as he saw it. "That's her," he whispered, his voice trembling. "That's Nala." Ella's heart skipped a beat. "Nala," she repeated. "You know this kitten?" The man nodded, his eyes brimming with tears. He held out the photo, which showed a much younger version of the kitten sitting beside an older woman. "She belonged to my grandmother," he explained. "When my grandmother passed away, Nala disappeared. We searched everywhere, but it was like she vanished." The cafe fell silent as Ella and the staff processed his words. The kitten, now awake, stretched and leapt gracefully from its perch, walking straight toward the man. It stopped at his feet, looking up at him with those familiar, soulful eyes. The man knelt, his hands shaking as he reached out. "Nala," he said softly, "it's really you." The kitten pressed its head against his hand, purring loudly. The connection between them was undeniable. Tears streamed down the man's face as he stroked the kitten's fur. "I don't understand how she ended up here," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "But thank you for taking care of her." Ella, still stunned, knelt beside him. "She's been with us for weeks," she said. "She's brought so much comfort to everyone who's come through the door. It's like she's been waiting for something, or someone." The man nodded, his gaze never leaving the kitten. "My grandmother always said Nala had a way of knowing when people needed her. She was more than a pet. She was family." The cafe staff and regulars gathered around as the man shared more about his grandmother and Nala. His grandmother had been a pillar of her community, known for her kindness and generosity. She had taken in Nala as a stray years ago, saying the kitten had appeared during a difficult time in her life. She used to say Nala wasn't just any cat, the man said, smiling through his tears. She believed Nala had a purpose, that she was meant to bring people together. Ella's chest tightened as she listened. "It sounds like your grandmother was right," she said softly. "That's exactly what she's done here." Though the man was overjoyed to reunite with Nala, he hesitated when Ella suggested he take her home. "She's made such a difference here," he said. "It feels like she's found her place." Ella shook her head, a gentle smile on her face. "She belongs with you," she said firmly. "Your grandmother chose her and she chose you. This is her homecoming." The man nodded, understanding the truth in her words. "Thank you," he said, his voice filled with gratitude, not just for caring for her, but for letting her touch so many lives. As the man prepared to leave with Nala, the cafe buzzed with emotion. Regulars came up to say goodbye, and Jenna even slipped the man a bag of Nala's favorite treats. Sam, though stoic as always, gave the kitten one last scratch behind the ears. "Take care of her," he said gruffly. Ella watched as the man carried Nala out the door, her heart both heavy and light. The kitten had brought so much to their lives, but it was clear now that her journey had come full circle. She had found her way home. The cafe felt quieter in the days after Nala's departure. Her small, playful presence was missed by the staff and regulars alike. Jenna caught herself glancing toward Nala's usual perch near the espresso machine, and Sam often paused mid-shift as though expecting her to weave between his feet. Ella, too, felt the void. Though she knew Nala was where she belonged, the kitten had left a mark on her heart that wouldn't soon fade. As she cleaned up after a particularly busy afternoon, she found herself staring at the note left by the mysterious figure weeks ago. "Take care of her. She was meant to find you. Ella whispered to herself. "And we were meant to find her." Despite the absence of their furry companion, the cafe remained a place of warmth and connection. The stories of Nala's uncanny ability to comfort people lingered, inspiring customers to share their own experiences of kindness and healing. Ella often overheard snippets of conversations that began with, "Do you remember the kitten?" followed by tales of how she had brought joy to someone's life. One day, a woman stopped Ella at the counter, her eyes filled with gratitude. "I never got the chance to tell you," she said, "but that kitten changed everything for me. I was going through a really hard time when I came here. Just sitting with her made me feel seen. Ella smiled, her chest swelling with emotion. She had a way of knowing what people needed, she said. It's something I'll never forget. The cafe itself began to evolve, its purpose shaped by the impact Nala had left behind. Ella decided to create a kindness corner, a small area with cozy chairs, books, and a bulletin board where customers could share uplifting messages or stories. A framed photo of Nala, taken by one of the regulars, hung above the board with a plaque that read, "In honor of Nala." A reminder of the comfort we can find in each other, the kindness corner quickly became a favorite spot in the cafe. People lingered there to read the notes, leave their own messages, or simply sit and reflect. The stories shared on the board ranged from small acts of kindness to profound moments of healing, each one a testament to the ripple effect Nala had started. Months later, Ella received a letter in the mail. It was from the man who had taken Nala home, filled with updates about her new life. He wrote about how she had adjusted quickly, becoming his constant companion. "It's like she never left my grandmother's side," he wrote. "Every day, she reminds me of her love and the importance of the connections we make." He included a photo of Nala lounging in a sunny window, her eyes half closed in contentment. Ella smiled as she held the picture, her heart swelling with both joy and a bittersweet ache. Nala was happy. She was home. As time passed, the cafe continued to thrive, its identity forever shaped by the little kitten who had walked through its doors one fateful morning. Ella often thought about how much Nala had taught them, about kindness, resilience, and the power of a quiet presence to change lives. One evening, as Ella locked up the cafe, she paused by the kindness corner. The bulletin board was overflowing with notes, each one a reminder of the community Nala had helped create. Ella reached out, tracing the edge of Nala's photo with her finger. "Thank you," she whispered, "for finding us when we needed you most." Though Nala was no longer there, her spirit remained woven into the fabric of the cafe. She had left behind more than memories. She had left a legacy of love, one that would continue to grow with every act of kindness, every connection forged within those walls. And in the quiet moments, when the cafe was still and the world seemed to slow, Ella could almost hear the soft purr of a kitten, reminding her that sometimes, the smallest lives leave the biggest marks. It had been weeks since Nala's departure, and while the cafe had embraced her legacy, there was an undeniable sense of something missing. The kindness corner overflowed with messages, and the cafe bustled with life as customers continued to share their stories of healing and connection. Yet, for Ella, there was a lingering unease she couldn't shake. Late one evening, as the cafe prepared to close, a powerful storm rolled into the city. The windows rattled under the weight of the wind, and rain lashed against the glass in relentless sheets. Jenna stood by the counter, counting the till, while Sam mopped the floor near the door. Ella was in the back, organizing supplies, when the sound of a frantic knock at the front door startled them. "Who could that be in this weather?" Jenna muttered, looking up in surprise. Sam leaned his mop against the wall and approached the door cautiously. When he opened it, a man drenched from head to toe stumbled inside, clutching something tightly against his chest. His face was pale, and his eyes wild with urgency. "Please," the man gasped, his voice barely audible over the storm. "I need your help." Ella emerged from the back just in time to see the man collapse into a chair near the door. Jenna rushed to grab a towel while Sam helped him steady himself. As the man unwrapped his arms, Ella's breath caught in her throat. In his hands was a tiny kitten, no larger than Nala had been when she first arrived at the cafe. Its fur was matted, and it shivered violently, its tiny chest rising and falling with labored breaths. The man's hands trembled as he cradled the kitten, his expression one of desperation. "I found her in an alley," he said, his voice breaking. "She was lying there in the rain. I couldn't just leave her." Ella stepped forward, her heart pounding. "Bring her here," she said, gesturing to a clean towel Jenna had spread on the counter. The man gently placed the kitten down, and Ella crouched beside it, her fingers brushing against its soaked fur. "She's so cold," Jenna whispered, her voice trembling. Ella nodded, her focus razor-sharp. "We need to warm her up. Jenna, get a heating pad. Sam, grab some warm water and a dropper." The staff sprang into action, their movements quick and purposeful. Ella wrapped the kitten in the towel, her hands steady despite the storm raging outside. "Stay with me, little one," she murmured. "You're safe now." As they worked to stabilize the kitten, the man explained more. "I've seen your cafe before," he said. "I heard about the kitten that lived here. I thought, if anyone could help, it'd be you." Ella's chest tightened. The memory of Nala surged to the forefront of her mind, and for a moment, she felt the weight of her absence more acutely than ever. But there was no time for nostalgia. The tiny life before her needed her now. The kitten let out a weak mew, its body trembling as warmth slowly returned to its limbs. Ella stroked its head gently, her voice soft and soothing. "You're going to be okay," she said. "We'll take care of you." By the time the storm began to subside, the kitten's breathing had steadied, and its shivering had lessened. The man, who had been watching anxiously, let out a sigh of relief. "Thank you," he said, his voice filled with gratitude. "I didn't know what else to do." "You did the right thing," Ella said firmly. "You saved her." The man stayed a little longer, drinking a cup of tea Jenna had made for him while the kitten rested in a makeshift bed by the espresso machine. Before he left, he paused at the door, his expression thoughtful. "This cafe, it's special," he said. "What you're doing here, it matters." Ella watched him disappear into the night, his words echoing in her mind. She turned back to the kitten, who was now curled up tightly, its tiny body rising and falling with each breath. "You've brought us another miracle," Jenna said softly, standing beside Ella. Ella nodded, her eyes never leaving the kitten. "Maybe it's not just the cafe that's special," she said. "Maybe it's these little lives that find us when we need them most." The storm passed by morning, leaving the city washed clean and quiet. In the cafe, the new kitten slept soundly in its makeshift bed near the espresso machine, a picture of fragile resilience. Ella watched it closely as the sunlight filtered through the windows, casting a warm glow over the room. Sam arrived early, holding a small bag of supplies. "I figured we could use these," he said, placing it on the counter. Inside were a soft blanket, kitten formula, and a tiny stuffed toy. He glanced at the kitten, his usual stoicism replaced by a quiet tenderness. "Think it's going to be okay?" Ella nodded. "She's a fighter," she said softly. "Just like the last one." The cafe opened as usual, though it felt different that morning. Word of the new kitten's arrival spread quickly, and customers trickled in, each pausing to look at the tiny creature. Some left notes on the kindness corner board, sharing their hopes and prayers for the kitten's recovery. A woman who had been a regular during Nala's time approached Ella with tears in her eyes. "It's like she left a piece of herself behind," the woman said. "This little one feels like a continuation of everything Nala brought to us." Ella smiled, though her heart ached. "It does feel like that, doesn't it?" she replied. "Almost like this kitten was meant to find us, too." As the day went on, the kitten began to stir, letting out soft, tentative mews. Ella and Jenna took turns feeding her with a dropper, her small frame growing stronger with each passing hour. By evening, the kitten had opened its eyes, a clear, bright green that sparkled with life. "She's beautiful," Jenna said, her voice filled with wonder. "Have you thought about what to call her?" Ella hesitated, her mind flashing back to the note left weeks ago. "Take care of her. She was meant to find you." The words felt just as true now as they had then. She looked at the kitten, her chest tightening with emotion. "Hope," she said finally. "Her name is Hope." The name resonated deeply with the cafe's visitors and staff. Hope became a symbol of renewal, a reminder that even in the face of loss and uncertainty, life could find a way forward. The kindness corner filled with notes about her, each one a reflection of the cafe's evolving legacy. But it wasn't until a few weeks later that Hope's arrival took on an even greater significance. One evening, as Ella was cleaning up after closing, she heard a familiar sound, a soft rustle outside the cafe's door. Her heart raced as she stepped outside, half expecting to see another figure waiting in the shadows. Instead, She found an envelope tucked under the welcome mat. Inside was a letter, written in neat, careful handwriting. Dear Ella, I don't know if you'll remember me, but I was the one who left Nala in your care. She had been my grandmother's most beloved companion, and when my grandmother passed, I wasn't sure how to care for her the way she deserved. I left her at your cafe because I knew she would find the love and purpose she needed there, and she did. I will always be grateful for what you gave her and for the way you let her touch so many lives. When I heard about the new kitten, I couldn't believe it. It feels like Nala's legacy lives on in hope. Thank you for everything you've done, not just for them, but for all of us. You've created something truly special. Ella stood on the steps, the letter trembling in her hands. Tears filled her eyes as she read the words again and again. Nala had been sent to them for a reason, just as Hope had been. The cafe wasn't just a place to grab coffee. It was a sanctuary, a space where lives intertwined in unexpected and meaningful ways. That night, as Ella sat by Hope's bed, she felt a profound sense of peace. Nala's story hadn't ended with her departure. It had transformed into something even greater. Through Hope, Nala's spirit continued to inspire kindness, connection, and healing. As Hope stretched and purred softly, Ella reached out to stroke her tiny head. "Welcome home," she whispered. "You're exactly where you're meant to be." And as the lights dimmed and the cafe settled into its quiet rhythm, Ella knew that the little kitten, like the one before her, had found her place. Together, they would carry forward the legacy of love and hope that had become the heart of Ella's cafe.